let's get started. So welcome everybody to Ask the Experts. This is a series where we really try to give as much information as we can. And so on the next slide here, it'll kind of talk about what Ask the Experts is all about, right? So the overview here is that a lot of the struggles when I was a customer was that there was a lot of information out there and it was scattered all over the place. It was good information. There's ServiceNow documentations, there's Now Create, there's all these different areas and pieces out there. But I was like, man, if it could be just consolidated into one experience, one thing, that would be fantastic. And so that's really the premise of Ask the Experts. It's to bring you information that's hard to find or you cannot find anywhere else with experiences that are very real. This isn't like the perfect happy path, use cases that we're going to talk about. These are people that have actually done it. They've banged their head on the keyboard. They've went through those trials and tribulations. They've faced those challenges. And so that's what Ask the Experts is all about. So I am Alan Andreas. I'm a senior developer advocate here at ServiceNow. I'm also a certified master architect. I've been on the platform for over 11 years, an MVP for multiple years, and I'm a passionate knowledge sharer. So a bit more about Ask the Experts and the kind of the setup here is that these sessions are about 35 to 40 minutes. There's going to be room for actual Q&A. In the past, some of the sessions have gone like a full hour long and no one could ask anything, which was like, why was it called Ask the Experts? We wanted to make sure to revamp it and give proper time for that. So we're going to do interaction with you guys. So in the chat, you can use the Q&A if you've got a specific question. If you miss asking and you go to sleep tonight and you're like, I wish I would have asked that question, you can use our ServiceNow community page and the Ask the Experts page specifically on the community to ask that question there. We're going to be monitoring those. And if you have to leave early, while this is a live webinar, if you have to leave early or you know someone else who needs to see this and couldn't make it, this is being recorded, and I will edit and get it all nice and polished up for everyone. Within 24 to 48 hours, it'll be posted on our developer or on a community, ServiceNow community YouTube page. And then these sessions are going to occur every 2 to 3 weeks. So coming up now, we've got the next one set up for September 28th or 30th, or whichever was the next 2 weeks after that. We've got October 14th set up. So a lot of sessions coming up. All right, so just before we get into the session, there's a safe harbor notice. I don't think that Harneet and I are going to talk about anything forward-leaning, but if we do, if we mention any forward-looking statements, please be advised that do not make your ServiceNow purchase decision based on what we are saying. We're just mentioning something we maybe have heard or we think might be in a future release, but I think we're safe on this one, we may not. So that's it for the safe harbor. Now, this session today, if you just happen to register because you're just a fan of Ask the Experts and you forgot what it might be about, this is about ServiceNow to ServiceNow integration methods. So I have an amazing guest here, Harneet, multi-year MVP, personal friend of mine, great person to know within the ecosystem, family man, good guy, all around. So I'm going to leave it over to Harneet to do an introduction more formally and take it from here. So Harneet, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Alan, and thanks everyone for joining. Who's here, after your office hours or still in your office hours. I'll just introduce myself. My name is Harneet Sital. I just go by Harneet. It's just easier to spell. Currently, I'm a platform architect working for a financial firm called Worldpay. I've been in the ecosystem for roughly about 9 years. So Alan and I have been in the ecosystem for very much same. We've seen things changing together. I'm a certified technical architect. I've been to Knowledge. I've spoken at Knowledge thrice, and I've been MVP for the last 3 years as well. Just getting into it and trying to understand why there would be a need to actually connect to ServiceNow instances. Pretty sure people might have actually come across those scenarios, but let's just summarize it as well and look at different scenarios where we need it. In general terminologies, we keep calling it e-bonding because it's e-bonding of tickets between the two instances. So it's an integration, but there's a formal term for that, which is called ServiceNow e-bonding. It's a process of creating, bidirectional integration between the two instances to send the records to and fro between the platforms. Why would we need it? I guess there would be different sort of examples where we would need it. Classic one, which is currently what we're dealing with, is an enterprise with. Oh, sorry, we haven't. I've dealt with in a previous experience where a big bank, they've got a global presence, but they've got instances specific to specific regions, like in the Middle East, they need specific instance and they need a parent instance to connect to. Second one would be a company that's been acquired or is getting split out between the two different organizations, and some of these services are being still provided by the parent organization. Last one could be a classic one. We've actually seen this. Most of the solutions have been built across these scenarios is around a managed service provider. So let's assume you've got a telecom partner and they provide services to other telecom partners, and they need an integration between the two instances so that there's a provider and there's a consumer which consumes all those services. Now, in all of these scenarios, you'd have to connect the two instances so that the tickets basically can flip between the two instances, and the information can be shared from the parent to the child, or from the child back to the parent instance. What different ServiceNow solutions are out there? So starting with instance data replication, I guess we have heard this. I guess Alan and I, we come from the certified master architect and the technical architect program, so we've heard about this. But if you haven't, one of the solutions is instance data replication, which basically, as the name suggests, it basically replicates the data from instance to another. We're going to deep dive into each of these solutions we are looking at just in a few minutes, so that we understand what these solutions are, how they've been built, and what sort of licenses goes behind it. The next one is remote instance spoke and remote processing. These are very much interrelated. Instance data replication, as I said, just replicates the data, while remote instance spoke and remote processing, they're both very much process oriented. So you basically can transform a record when it's being sent from one instance to another. So classic example, you've got an incident to be created on your other instance. You have to have transformation and translation capabilities. So say a ticket in progress in the parent instance could relate to a new state or being called, I guess, a different state in the other instance. So both these processes very much interlinked, but they've got different scenarios that they cover. And I think Alan and I were just talking about this earlier. We both use each of these processes, and we know what the pros and cons of each of those are. Service Bridge, again, a classic ServiceNow solution, which is a perfect amalgamation of everything that we've seen above. So it helps you with having a process put up on your data transfer. So say you've got an incident, you've got another incident, but then you need to put process on top of it. It covers that. But Service Bridge is a bit more expanded than that. It helps you with service catalogs. It helps you with syncing the service catalog between the instances. And then you've got a producer which sends the service catalog information to your child or your consumers. A classic example would be you've got a telecom request, a new mobile phone that needs to be ported. Again, all the customer instances, they'll have that service request form, but when you submit it, it actually goes back to the parent service provider. And at last, again, sorry, if none of these solutions fit you, because we're going to look at them in a few minutes, but if some of these solutions are not the perfect fit solutions, there's always scope for having custom integrations built out. And that requires you to have a bit more technical expertise in terms of building out integrations using REST, using flow designers, or some of the new technologies that have been out there in the market. Last but not the least, sorry, this third-party connectors available out of the box. On the store app, there's third-party connectors available being built by specific organizations, and they're being available to the customers as well. Some of the alternate solutions, we're going to touch base on this very minorly. So there are alternate solutions that we can consider if that's what your requirements are. ServiceNow has been coming up with a lot of new technologies, features in the platform. And so things like data fabric connectors, remote tables, and system clones. I think if it's a very minor requirement, then these are the sort of solutions we'd look at as well. We're going to touch base in detail in each of these solutions as well, like when would we consider having each of these solutions used. I think when we consider integrations, I think Alan, you and I have actually been in this space before, right? So customers or our leaders, they basically ask, what is the risk of using a solution? I think talking about the considerations we have here on the screen, we've got 4 different solutions, very high level solutions we're going to talk about. First one, as you can see, it's an integration hub with spokes. What spokes means is nothing but actions available on a flow designer where you can use readily available actions. This is all out of the box, being provided by ServiceNow. Any new features that comes out, any new spokes that have been coming out, it's all provided by ServiceNow. So as you can see, the overall risk is really minimal. Then you've got ServiceNow store-based connectors, wherein an organization such as AT&T, they've built a store-based connector and they put it on the store. People from ServiceNow, they'll have a look at the application and they've approved it. So again, the overall risk is slightly higher because it's not ServiceNow, it's been built by a third party, but it's been approved by ServiceNow. Then obviously we've got third-party connectors. So these are solutions that have been provided by organizations that build it. Let's assume it's like an intermediate application which pulls the records from one ServiceNow instance and sends it to another. Again, it's one of the options, but there's higher risk because then it's not ServiceNow to ServiceNow connector, but there's an intermediary solution that's helping you connect with both the applications. If that goes down, both the instances aren't connected to each other. Last but not least, custom builds. Building a solution all together right from scratch. You can think about how the solution needs to be built out. You've got your requirements laid out, then you can decide, this is how I want to really build it out. It could be a simple business rule, it could be a schedule job, it could be a flow designer. I mean, you get to decide how you want to build it and what level of customizations or what sort of governance you need to put on a custom build solution.
Yeah,
So
and the big thing here for everyone, we included this in here because ServiceNow to ServiceNow, while it is ServiceNow, it's still an integration, right? So we wanted to include this integration considerations in this slide here specifically is a gem that you would really want to put in your back pocket for any time you were discussing an integration, whether it's ServiceNow to ServiceNow or to Salesforce or Jira or whatever it might be. This is your kind of walking path of where do I focus first? One, two, three, four. This is going to be where your clients, your customers, your own boss, yourself, whomever might be wanting to know what to think about. This is the path you should evaluate and start from the top and go to the bottom as the worst case scenario.
really well said, Alan. Thank you. Again, I think we've looked at a few solutions. Obviously, as I said, we're going to go into some of these solutions in a bit, but how do you select the right solution? Again, Alan and I have very much been in this ecosystem. We have actually looked at this specific scenario about connecting to ServiceNow instances. So we know what sort of questions, what sort of decision points comes up when you need to select a solution. So what we've tried is we've just tried to put some of these on the board. First one is the integration architecture. How does the integration needs to work between the two instances? Is it an event-based, so say a comment being added, a work note being added, and it needs to be sent across, attachment being added, send it across, or it needs to be a schedule-based, so say sync the data every 4 hours. Classic example for scheduled data is, let's say you've got locations, you've got departments, and all of the data that needs to be integrated with the platform, but it doesn't need to be real time, right? So it has to be either event-based or scheduled. Second is either is it going to be a push or a pull? So if there are two ServiceNow instances, which instance is going to push the information, and or is it going to be one instance sending the information, or is it going to be the other instance pulling the information, or is it both? So again, it depends on what sort of integration architecture you decide. The solution will basically be drilling into that aspect. Classic thing, we need data transformations a lot of times if there's two ServiceNow instances being connected. So again, if data transformation is required, that's another bit we need to consider while choosing the solution. Additional licensing costs. Some of the solutions we've looked at actually requires you to have additional license being bought from ServiceNow. So again, you have to consider that aspect as well while you're deciding the right solution. Scalability or dynamicity of the solution. So when you decide a solution, you have to make sure it's a future-proof solution. So it's not something that you look at from a year perspective, but you have to keep it consistently running for a large amount of time. Or if things are changing in the platform, the solution still sticks. And again, you can actually scale it as well. So say you've got two instances connected, but if you need to connect third one, then you still need to think about having a bit more dynamicity in that solution or transformation capabilities. The next one, customization or the governance required. As I said, not all the solutions would be 100% perfect for your requirements. You may have to configure or smart customize your solution. So how much customization is required on any of the solutions you've chosen, and how do you manage the governance on top of it? So again, you'll have to think about all of those aspects when you're choosing a solution as well. Last thing, understand a use case fully. The reason for that is you need to have a clear idea of what are your different scenarios that you're trying to build out, and then choose a solution rather than choose a solution and then trying to fit the requirements into the solution, because that's going in a wrong direction and you'd be actually overly customizing your product. Classic example we have seen is domain separation versus query business rules. So you're trying to segregate the information between, based on access. Some people go for domain separation because you need to segregate the data, but then there could be easy solutions such as query business rules. It's a really poor example, but it just gives you an idea. So if you go towards domain separation and all you needed was query business rules, you actually end up having more governance managing the domain separation. I think we'll just get right into it. So the 6 solutions we've looked at on the first slide, we're going to go into each of these solutions on a high level, but then we're also going to look at an actual use case, and we talk about each of these solutions and how do they actually fit into that use case. Instance data replication, as I said, its idea comes at an additional costing. So when you are planning to integrate 2 instances, and if you want the 2 instances to be connected, it needs to have idea on both the instances so that the data can be actually shared between the platform. When do you want to use it? It's when you have got the data to be copied from one instance to another in the same organization. So say I think as I said, so a big financial firm, they've got presence in the UK, they've got presence in the US, but they've got separate ServiceNow instance, say in the Middle East, and they want the data to be consistent between the platforms as locations, departments, and they don't want to integrate with that instance because let's say it's a on-prem instance. What you would want to do in those scenarios is use IDR. And again, as I said, it's more schedule based. So you can decide when the data needs to be, copied over from one instance to another. But it cannot cater to requirements around event based. So say something has changed in your instance and you want to send it. So say a new department is added. As soon as that's added, you need to send it out. IDEA doesn't cater to those sort of examples. It's a schedule based solution. The next one we're going to look at is the remote instance spoke. I think Alan was just talking about this earlier. Alan has actually used this previously for one of the customers he's worked for. The licensing, it's part of Integration Hub plugin, but you have to be careful around the transactions. So Integration Hub, I guess, licenses comes in a very different manner. But again, you have to make sure the number of transactions that's needed for remote instance spoke has been discussed with your service account managers and make sure you've got enough of that. What is remote instance spoke? It's basically a connector being built out by ServiceNow. There are spokes or actions pre-built for some of these use cases already. All you need to do is create a flow with a specific trigger. First you obviously connect the 2 instances using credentials, and then there are a lot of pre-built actions that you can use. The only limitation of this that I could remember is actually a process overview on top of it. So say you've got incident process on your parent instance, you've got incident process on your child instance, but you need transformation capabilities or more like translation capabilities. But remote instance spoke is more like copy the record, put it in the second instance, pretty much that's it. But trying to overlay or putting a blanket on with a process oriented lens, I think that's slightly not possible. Journal fields, I think most of the customers usually want comments, work notes being added by an agent or by a customer being bonded between the 2 instances. That's at the moment not possible with remote instance spoke. That's a known issue. Classic service catalogs, you cannot have service catalogs being integrated between the 2 platforms because there's like forms and there's a lot of scripts that goes behind managing those forms. So remote instance spoke, as I said, you can use it, but for a record to be copied from one instance to another based on a specific event or a trigger that has happened. An extension to remote instance, there's remote processing. So as the name already suggests, it's basically a process blanket on top of the instance spoke that's already built. Now, how does it help you is, it actually requires you to have Integration Hub Enterprise license and may require additional licenses, as I said, for managing more transactions between the 2 instances. And again, both the instances needs to have remote processing to have the integration being bidirectional. As I said, it's a really good solution when you're talking about having the integration done between the 2 platforms, but have a more process, blanket on. So say you've got an HR process on your parent instance, you've got child instance, and you've got an HR process in there, and you want to transform that information. It's a really good solution. And I think I ended up using this, and this is what I'm going to talk about in a few slides as well, the solution that we've used. But I'm going to be honest in this session. The solution wasn't actually built for all the requirements we had. We had to do a lot of customizations to cater to all the requirements we had. Service catalog integration, it doesn't support service catalogs. You have to build another custom solution just to cater to service catalogs. And obviously the record processing is slow. When I say slow, it's not that slow, but when you're managing like hundreds of thousands of records going into the other instance within a few minutes, then it doesn't support that well because there's just a single queue which processes all the records from, so let's say you've got an incident created or an incident commented on instance A and it needs to be sent across to instance B. It's all part of that same queue. So incidents, problem, changes, HR records, cases, all of them going into the same queue and then being sent out. And similarly on the customer instance, you've got all the records coming in and then processed one by one. So it's a single queue that processes on both the sides. I think everything that we've just looked at from a solutions perspective is this slide just cover. I mean, this is an actual screenshot from ServiceNow documentations, which basically just covers a little bit about when should we use each of these solutions. We've very much covered that. So replicating an entire instance, you use IDR. You've got ad hoc integrations. You just want to export and import the records from one instance in another. You use in remote instance. But if you want to put a process on top of it, you use remote processing to use. And again, the remote instance and remote processing, they both use Flow Designer and they've got actions built in. And you may see some difference between the privileges and how the actual implementation is done between the two areas as well. How does it all work? As I said, remote instance and remote processing, they're both based off flows. So as you can see, it's got a trigger. So you can decide when the flow needs to trigger. So you can have incident created or incident updated as an example. And then you can have, as I said, some of these actions are pre-built. So you can, export a case and export an incident, export a problem record. So all of these actions are pre-built with very minor configurations. You can actually just readily use them. But if there's a lot of transformation required, then you may have to create duplicates of each of these actions and then manage them as you go. So a lot of governance required if there's you've got transformation capabilities that you need on top of these. Service Bridge, classic solution. The only downside to Service Bridge is the licensing part. It's an additional expense, and it's truly expensive because we actually considered using Service Bridge rather than service processing because it covers the service catalog area as well. And again, it's a ServiceNow product, so we don't have to manage it. The governance is slightly lesser than having remote processing and doing some more additional customizations to cater to that limitation around service catalog. Now, Service Bridge is a classic solution that was built by ServiceNow, considering the managed service provider sort of scenarios where you've got a parent organization that's providing services to different child customers, and they've got service catalogs that they need to send it across to all the child customers, and all the consumers actually want to use those service catalog forms to submit a case, submit a ticket. Say your AT&T as a classic example, or one of the financial firms as a classic example, or telecom is a classic example as well. When to use it? When you have actually got your organization as a service provider and you've got multiple customers or more than a few customers that are going to use it, because otherwise that expense doesn't actually compensate for the amount that you're going to pay.
Yeah, and Harneet,
Again,
just back on that one just for a second. So just to kind of talk about the expense, right? That it's a real consideration for people to consider the cost of it. But when we talk about it being expensive, it might mean in your scenario of what you were looking to do, the ROI just kind of didn't make sense, right? But for a lot of our customers and a lot of people that have more of an enterprise grade level experience where they're trying to really provide a service through a managed service provider or a partner or whatever that might be, different services, having things with Service Bridge where it's a entire package, a product that's got all the bells and whistles, it's got everything teed up, everything set up, very nice user interface, user experience on both sides from configuration to usability. I think that the cost there kind of is justified based on the different scenarios. So definitely one to still keep in mind with everything else. But yes, it does have a cost associated to it beyond just kind of an integration hub package tier or something to that effect. Yeah.
Yeah, and very well said. I've just read your comment. I think even in the integration hub packages, there are different packages, and you may have to choose your solution based on that because there might be an additional cost to actually go to the next tier of the integration hub as well. I think this slide basically summarizes the last three solutions we've looked at: the remote processing, the remote instance, and the Service Bridge. So as you can see, Service Bridge has been highlighted in a green color because it's a solution that's built on Integration Hub RPS, which is remote processing. So there's another layer that ServiceNow has built on top of that. So the underlying architecture is same. They're still using the same tables and to integrate the two instances, but then there's obviously a layer that helps you to govern the two instances rather easily. So if you're thinking about integrating just two instances, your answer may be lying with IDR or RPS or remote instance. But if it's a managed service provider instance, then it's a Service Bridge might be a better solution because of everything that we've just discussed. And what you can do, you can have service catalog, you can have cases that can be integrated with the two platforms. But when you think about RPS as a solution, service catalog might be that area where you have to do some more customizations to manage service catalog between the two instances. Whereas cases, it's pretty easier because then it's just transformation required between the two instances. We're going to talk about bespoke integration as well. A lot of people hate doing a custom solution altogether because it requires you to do a lot of governance. It requires a lot of efforts to build a new integration. And obviously managing the whole integration along the side is difficult as well. But then what it gives you as a benefit is you build it based on your requirements. You can adjust it based on your requirements and you own the overall product. Licensing, you may have to think about different aspects. It won't be free because you might be thinking it's a custom solution. It might be free. It may or may not be, because then you have to actually think about how you're going to integrate the two instances. Are there any custom tables involved? Because when you integrate two platforms, you have to think about import and importing and transforming those records, and then again on the other side as well. So you have to think about any custom tables you may be building, or any additional transactions that you may be utilizing to connect to the two instances. Now, when would you use it? As I said, if you want more flexibility around having that solution built to your own needs, and you don't need the whole package, and you just need a specific thing to be, as I said, maybe just one table, and you want that to be integrated with the two platforms with minor transformation capabilities, then I think bespoke integration would be your thing to go. Limitations, I think we've just talked about them. It's effort intensive because you actually have to build it and manage it. Requires governance because you build it, you have to make sure it doesn't break with upgrades, because it could be that one of the APIs you might be using is actually no more supported by ServiceNow. So it requires a lot of governance and managing it as we go around. I think we briefly talked about this. So additional options. So it doesn't 100% talk about an integration between ServiceNow to ServiceNow, but these could be one of those solutions you might be looking for, and it wouldn't be that process intensive as the others that we've seen. So data fabric connectors, ServiceNow has very recently come out with data fabric connectors. It's a zero copy concept. So you don't have to copy the data and it's still available on your other instance, very much similar to remote tables. Now, what that means is you need access to that information, but you don't have to have that information on your instance. So say from a reporting standpoint, you need information for cases that have been generated in Saudi Arabia instance, in your parent instance, but you don't need that data to be available in your instance. All you need that is for better analytics, right? So what you can do is you can use data fabric connectors, pull the information out, have it in your parent instance, and you run your analytics on it. You don't actually have to copy or transform that data and keep it in a parent instance. Very similar to remote tables. Now, remote tables have got limitations because you cannot have more than 10,000 records in there. And again, it's more like a cached version of the data. So you have to be very thoughtful. But if it's a small chunk of information that you need, let's say to process a service catalog, it's 100 specific choices from the parent table, parent instance required in the child instance. You can actually think about remote tables as one of the solutions as well. Last but not the least, it might sound funny, but system clones. We've actually seen scenarios where they didn't need any of those solutions. All they needed was system clones, because then they could actually clone the information from A instance to B. The only limitation here is it has to be as part of the same organization, because that's the only way you can actually clone the instances from one. And you can decide what tables you need to include in that system clone and how often you want to clone the instances from A to B. Now with ServiceNow giving that opportunity to the customers, we're able to do the system clones by ourselves. We can schedule the clones, define the tables, define any scripts that needs to be executed post or pre. I think that helps you to do some of those transformation features as well. I think I'm just going to jump into it. I think Alan and I keep saying this, but because we've both got that very similar experience and we've had very similar requirements, this is what we've done very recently. So the experience comes from an organization that's splitting from a parent organization, but the parent organization is still giving services to our organization. So wherein you've got computers being still delivered by the parent organization. We've got Citrix as an application still being provided as a service from our parent organization. Now, it's not a classic consumer provider example, but you've still got a parent instance that's running some of these aspects, and you've got child instance utilizing those services. So the sort of requirements that we had and why we chose a specific solution is all listed down here. So we had IDSM tables that had to be integrated or kept in sync between the two instances, and including knowledge, because knowledge is key part of it. But knowledge is just a one-time thing. So you pick up the aspect and put it in your instance, but then We don't have to manage knowledge as a live integration, but ITSM tables were. All the active records have to be synced between the two platforms. There was another requirement to have historic data being migrated from our parent instance to our instance as well. Now, again, historic data is just a one-time thing. So you may have to think about different solutions, as I said, right? So we were talking about IDR earlier. So historic data, it's a one-time thing. I may have to consider IDR, bring the data into our platform, or just think about a custom solution. So bring the instance, the data into our platform, and we're done and dusted. But then for active records, which are, coming in and out of the platforms, you may have to think about a different solution. We have to map the processes. So incident process in our parent organization and our organization is slightly different because we had to transform it based on how we need it. So again, you have to have the process lens on top of it as well. Classic, we need transformations because there might be a field on the parent instance, but a different field on our instance which needs that value. So having that translations and transformation capability was another bit. Attachments, near real-time visibility. So it had to be really quick sync between the two instances, say 30 seconds or a minute at max to have the record being visible on the other side. And service catalog as well. As I said, some of these services were being provided by our parent organization. So say I need a laptop. I actually can't raise that request in our instance because they are the ones fulfilling it. So the ticket has to be created in their instance. And then because I've raised it, I need an update on it. So I have to put a comment, but then the work notes would actually be coming from them, or they would be fulfilling that request. Classic, we wanted to avoid duplicates as well. So when the integration is running, it doesn't create duplicates. What did we end up doing? We actually ended up using remote processing because it sounded like the classic solution we needed from all the other aspects from an ITSM standpoint, except for the service catalog. So the middle part basically touch bases on the service catalog. So we had to build a custom application just for managing service catalogs being built in system A, being sent to system B, and we keep syncing the catalog items between the two instances. So we don't manage it at all. Any change being made on the parent instance comes through into our instance. It's a custom application we built. I think Service Bridge does cover that, but as I said, it was a really expensive solution, so we couldn't go for it. The last bit is historic data. So it's a one-time sync. So we just wanted to bring the data from the instance and put it on our side in a read-only mode. So what we ended up doing was we again built a custom application, the custom integration, built that information into our platform and just left it for analytics purpose. The challenges we had with RPS, it's a new solution that's been built by ServiceNow. So there's a lot of, it's not, I wouldn't say it's new, but there's underlying issues managing that instances set. So service catalog you can't do. It's a single queue processing. So if it fails, it fails. There's no self-heal mechanism as well. So I think I'm going to talk about them in the slides. So I'll just leave that out. So what really worked for us when we use RPS and the custom apps as a solution or a custom integration, it's a combination of two approaches. What really worked well was RPS was the kind of solution we were looking for. It had the transformation capabilities we needed. It had the real-time sync that we needed as well. It's using flow, so it was easier for us to maintain. There's room for us to make customizations because not the ideal solution. You have to do certain configurations or customizations to support it. So very easily manageable by our developers. But what didn't really work with our solution was there's a single queue for processing. So imagine you've got a stack of bricks. The first brick is stuck. You cannot actually pick up the second brick. The issue with that is you've got an incident. It had a work node added, but then you had problems and changes, and the same incident being commented again. The second one is still not processed because the first one isn't processed and it went to an error state because of some reason. Classic example, an attachment with a really big size and your RPS solution cannot process. What happens is there's no self-heal mechanism. So we had to build that self-healing mechanism wherein you take an action on that record and just goes away and then you start processing the rest of it. I think we've been talking about this quite a lot, but service catalog, there's no way to manage service catalog forms and scripts and everything between the two instances. So we had to end up building a custom solution for that.
Yeah, and Harneet here, just to kind of jump in for like a second on my experience, right? So with mine, we went with remote instance spoke. So just to kind of level set and explain. So I was helping a government agency. So for those that are in the military or know of the military, we have our military ID cards, right? They're CAC cards, PIV cards, whatever you want to call them. Those are handled by the DEER's office. So that's an office people go into, they provide their documentation to then get their ID card and such. So I was helping them with this. So the concern was security, right? So they didn't want the customers as end users, veterans and such, getting into an instance that had their processes behind it, their records, people manipulating the URL, logging into something on a random Tuesday where somebody promoted something to production and it broke something. They didn't want anyone to even be in that instance. So they set up what's called a mission instance. So anything mission facing, front facing, all customers came through here. And so the operations instance was where the agents actually worked the cases. So in this context, we're talking about customer service management, CSM. So the customers would go into the mission facing instance, their instance, the only thing that they would know, and they would create a case about getting an ID card, adding a dependent, removing a dependent, whatever that might be. And then that case would be basically echoed or copied from mission over to the operation side. And so on the operation instance, that's where we had a requirement to keep the sysID the same, the number the same, so that when the agents and the people were talking back and forth, everything stayed in sync, attachments got brought over, and all of that. But while the agents were working the cases in the operations side, they may need to reach out for another team for support. They might need to reach out to a third party. And so we had different case statuses only in that operation instance. And so that's where, again, we didn't want the customers to see, oh, hey, your case has been changed to awaiting third party vendor. Well, they would be like, what the heck does that even mean? Right. So we wanted to separate the processes between the two because it wasn't exactly one for one. There was different things that needed to happen over here. And then once we decided on what statuses or states made sense to the other side, to the customers, we then built kind of a mapping to say if it's state one, two, and three, then it's, state one over here in the customer side. So just kind of mentioning the remote instance spoke is free as part of the Integration Hub starter package. So most customers again, safe harbor, I can't speak for everybody, but most customers get the starter package for free as just being a ServiceNow customer. You get a few little bit of spokes and things in Integration Hub, but one of those is the remote instance spoke. So that's why we went with that one. It required a bit more, as you saw from Harneet's breakdown between the different options. It's definitely more manual setup, a lot more configuration that you need to do, but there are pre-built actions and spokes that are there that help you get it done. And that's what worked for us. And it took a little bit to get it set up, but then once it was actually working and going, it was super exciting, super fun to see. And one thing I want to throw out here is, and just kind of preempting this, you're hearing about a lot of stuff today. You're hearing, you're reading, you're seeing. But Harneet and I both know you learn best, most people learn best by actually getting your hands on the keyboard and doing it yourself. So I can say, and I just checked this before I'm about to say this because I didn't want to be lying to everybody, but you can activate the remote instance spoke in your personal developer instance for free. And actually, if you have another personal developer instance, I'm not saying to run out and get like 7 of them or whatever, but just wink, wink. If you happen to have 2, you could, in theory, set up a remote instance spoke connection between both of them and practice sending over an incident and stuff like that. So highly recommend that you do try to get your hands on the keyboard, set these things up. Even if you're not going to have anything to do with this, just add it to your list of something you need to learn, something you need to know. This is going to be one of those rare things, one of these rare topics that not everybody's going to know about. And so for you attending today or watching today, you're going to have just that little edge on everyone else where you've had exposure to it and you've kind of set it up yourself. So sorry, Harneet, to kind of jump in there with my experience, but I wanted to add to what you've said and also let people know that you can actually jump in to your PDI and actually get some hands-on work with it. So.
That's really good insights. Thank you so much, Alan. And I think it's always comes back to that POC bit as well. So when you decide a solution, I think we've been doing this for almost 3 years now. We decide a solution, we always run a POC. So do a small bit of things to run across both instances, see if you've got any major issues coming through, because then you can actually change your approach. You've still got the time to change the approach. But once you've actually went to full-fledged and building it, there are times where you can actually can't go back. So having these worked out really, really helps. So thank you, Alan. Just a few key takeaways in terms of how these solutions were thought and how we made sure that these solutions are future proof. We understood what the integration needs were, and then based on that, we made a solution. Sorry, we went for a solution. So as Alan said, he went for remote instance spoke because it's part of the package. It comes with your licensing with ServiceNow. Just needed case to be intertwined between the two platforms. So it was really easy attachments. It caters to attachments as well. For us, it was slightly different requirements. So we had to think about all those different requirements, everything across the board. As I said, historic tickets being considered in our case, attachments, high level, big level attachments being considered as well, real time visibility across the two instances. So we had to think about a different solution, but then we had to have some more custom components as well around, historic tickets and stuff like that. So understand what needs to be built out and then start planning the solution. I guess there's no one size fits all solution because you always end up doing more configurations or customizations on a product. Even with ServiceNow, I haven't seen any customers having at least 99% of health scan percentage on their customizations, because you end up doing changes, you end up doing you action changes or notification changes, or you end up writing custom scripts to do certain things, right? So you have to have a solution, but then build on it. Licensing complexity may change, and you have to make decisions based on that as well. So as I said, Service Bridge was the perfect solution for us. It was really expensive, and the sort of use case that Service Bridge covers is slightly different than ours. So we had to make adjustments. So you have to think about money and the complexity, to manage that integration as well. You have to think about flexibility and scalability. So you have to think about long term. So you have to keep the solution up and running for a long term. So you have to think about choosing the right solution when you are, making that decision. So idea may be the solution for now, but then when you think about 5 years down the line where your organization gets more acquisitions and mergers, you may have to think about a different solution, keep it more scalable. Last one, custom integrations are powerful but demanding. So we thought about having two custom integrations built out in that same project for historic tickets as well as for service catalog, but they're very demanding. We have to keep a lot of governance on both of these integrations we've done. It's really hard to manage custom rules being built out, custom tables being built out. So, and again, we always have to keep an eye on the upgrades as well, because if there's something coming out with an upgrade that we can readily use, we have to actually change our approach as well. So just think about all the aspects before choosing a custom integration. Yeah, that's pretty much the key takeaways from the session. I'll open the floor. Alan.
Yeah, so we've had a couple of questions throughout that I've tried to jump on and answer. So we've had somebody ask, when is this video going to be available, right? So it is being recorded right now. I'm going to do some editing, kind of clean it up, make it nice and polished. That will be posted to our ServiceNow community YouTube channel within 24 to 48 hours. And then obviously, if you're watching this right now, the video's there because you're watching it. So that'll be there for you. We had someone else mentioned that they wanted to know what was the difference between remote instance spoke and the remote process sync, because they sound very similar. And then right after that, you hit a home run with that one slide where you had all of the different ones on one slide, summary breakdown between those. So be sure to review the information. For those that are looking for a PDF version of the deck, just to have this information, we'll be providing that as well after the session, so that'll be available. There's also an article that Harneet wrote for another third-party company that's out there. So if you're wanting more information about that, that's there. And then I did want to preempt people asking, how can I get involved today? Do I have to pay today to even practice this? That's where, again, it is available on your PDI for the remote process or for the remote instance spoke option. So kind of your entry level tier, your bottom level tier one to get into this, that is available, but it is extremely powerful as far as the actions that are there. Like Harneet mentioned, you can sync a record from one instance to another, you can build triggers, you can copy the attachments, you can do all sorts of things with it and build an incoming process on the other side. So you can kind of intercept the record before it's created on the other instance and then change up some stuff on it. Like I mentioned, we needed to have the sysids being the same. And so to be able to do that, I had to basically create a before insert business rule on that table that looked at a correlation ID field to say, oh, this was one created from this other instance. So I kind of passed over a little secret password, if you will, in the correlation ID over to the other instance, and then tapped into that to say, okay, this came from instance A. Now let's set the GUI ID on it, the sys ID on it, to match what is on the other instance. Otherwise, the new instance, the target instance, is going to create a sysid from scratch like it normally would because it's inserting the record. So little things there. We've got a few people mentioning that it's pretty interesting to jump into. And yeah, there's been some people posting on LinkedIn with, custom integrations. It's easy to do, takes a few minutes. You could build a scripted REST API using the table API within just minutes and do something kind of similar, right? But you're manually doing it, you're setting it all up. You have to kind of know coding and some other things. These are considered more of these low code, no code kind of options. So the remote instance spoke just for the baseline is essentially no coding at all. You could literally just drag and drop the action on, and then it says, okay, tell me what table you're talking about. Okay, tell me what record you're talking about. Okay, tell me what fields you want to bring over. And it's literally drag and drop, filling in the blank, if you will. So just kind of keep that in mind. Outside of that, we do have somebody with their hand raised. They've been waiting patiently. Let me see if I can do this here. Let's see, hand raised. I'm gonna click on up. You lowered it down. Do you still want to talk? Let us know. Put your hand back up if you do, so I can allow you to talk if you want to come off mute and jump in. Otherwise, add it into the chat, add it into the Q&A. But I don't see anything else, so I think we've knocked out some stuff. But I think, Harneet, did you have some kind of filler questions that you wanted to kind of talk through? We've got a few more minutes left.
I think some of the times, I guess this has been one of my knowledge sessions as well. So people wanting to have parallel executions being done, because you could have incident as one of the queues, you could have problem as one of the queues, or IDSM as one of the queues, HR as one of the queues, and CSM as one of the queues. Now, what that helps you to do is it helps you to process things parallelly. So while your IDSM process is working, your process is working, as well as your HR process is working. Now, you may require lesser number of worker nodes for HR and CSM because there might be lesser number of interactions or transactions happening, but you may need more on the ITSM side. How do you make all of those decisions? Again, it goes back into your architecture decisions as well. Do you want to do parallel processing? A lot of ServiceNow options available. I think we started exploring this a couple of years before, where we've got concurrent imports available. So what happens is, let's say you've got 1 million records coming into your platform within 10 minutes time frame, and you've got your transform maps running each and every record, and it's processing. Obviously, it could, I mean, theoretically speaking, millions of records take at least a lot of time to process, right? You can actually think about doing concurrent imports there. So what it does is, because there's no sequence required on that data, you can actually transform that. Or even if you require a sequence, you can actually build a logic on concurrent imports and let the import sets pick the specific records that it needs to import. Classic example goes around security operations. We did security operations as well. Now imagine millions of vulnerabilities and updates happening, and you've got transformation that needs to be done on these records and being transformed to the other platform. It takes about 10 minutes to 15 minutes to even do 1 million records. How do you manage all of this? Is by parallel processing. So when you think about an architecture, also think how you can manage multiple queues or parallel processing so that it doesn't affect. So we kept SecOps queues as different from our IDSM queues and CSM queues. Reason, there could be millions of records and it may take 8 minutes to process or 15 minutes to process, but then you've got CSM and ITSM running smoothly because they're running in their own separate queues. You can build some of these custom solutions yourself, or a lot of ServiceNow products have got these features nowadays where you can pick it up and put them in a parallel processing phase rather than a
Yeah. And I
single
think,
queue.
we had another question, and I think you had this same kind of scenario. How do you manage the sync when the instance versions are different? And so the neat thing here, especially for at least the remote instance spoke that I was talking about, as long as the feature set is available from the plugin on both sides, the version really doesn't matter, right? Like it's as long as CSM somehow didn't completely blow up and change the form and all of that. The version, whether one's on Yokohama, one's on Zurich or whatever, it doesn't actually matter as long as the functionality of what you need the plugin or the spoke or the actions to do is the same thing. Was that how you found it as well, Harneet?
Yeah, and I think with ServiceNow pushing a lot of these things on ServiceNow Store, that's really helpful because then the ServiceNow Store application basically suggests that it's actually compatible with, let's say, versions starting from Xanadu all the way till Zurich. So that way you can choose a solution and you understand your other instances maybe on a different version, or they're planning to upgrade and currently they're on this specific version. These store apps, they basically help you to make that decision easily as well. And I think upgrades, I think that was another bit of an issue for us when one of the instances are being upgraded and you still have to manage the integrations running because the parent and the child instance still needs to keep sending the records across. What worked out for us was we actually tested the upgrades with our current integrations on our lower instances and made sure it's all running smooth and nice. And then we did the upgrades. So we let our parent company know that this is when you need to do an upgrade because we have now done all the testing. So instance with the versioning doesn't always, I mean, we haven't come across a scenario where they've caused issues because the products, as Alan said, underlying technologies are exactly, they're still running, they've got all those features in there. It works across two different versions of the platform as well. I think we did, so our RPS, our parent instance was running on, I think, a different version and we were on Xanadu. So yeah, it actually worked out for us as well. It didn't have any issues even having two different versions, but
Yeah,
always consider
awesome.
that. So
So
always, yeah.
great stuff. Well, Harney, if you don't mind going to that last slide there. So thank you everyone for attending today's session. We hope we've tried to make it action-packed for you, containing a lot of information. And again, you could find this out there. I'll be honest, you could figure this out. You could find it out there, but it's scattered in like 30 different places. We brought it into a consolidated, concise place, but what you can't find is little nuggets of information like Harneet's experience, my experience, and those little gotchas or information. So be sure to attend future Ask the Experts sessions. That QR code on the screen there will take you right to our community page. Like I mentioned, this video will be uploaded within 24 to 48 hours, as well as a PDF version of the deck. And don't forget, you can attend into your own PDI and do some remote instance spoke testing yourself. Until then, we'll see you on the next session. And again, Harneet, thank you so much for being here today and for all of you for taking the time to be here. So take care, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks, everyone.